With that, I would like to introduce and invite to the stage Mr. Vladimir Simunović. Ciao. So, pleasure to have you here. My understanding from our discussions is that you have a very interesting journey to share with us today.
First of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It is a real pleasure to join today and to share the experience that we at Raiffeisen gained throughout the several years of journey to the cloud, and then being now even mature, I would say, like what were the motivations, what were the challenges, and also what are the achievements. I will try to put it in a kind of a general level so that it's applicable for broader round as well. Yeah.
Good. We are talking a lot about digitalization as the main topic today. It's definitely one of the biggest challenges within today's markets, but there are also others, is my understanding.
Yes, true. I mean, just hearing the presentations previously, you can see that the world around is tremendously changing. I mean, technology is so dynamically transforming, but it's not only the technology, but it's also the customer experience and the expectations, or how do we as the, let's say, participants in the financial services market act. And this is one hand side, and the other one is, yes, we still live in a kind of a monolithic world where we have the monolithic applications, which is very hard to transform. We also still predominantly work in a silo mode, like with a communication that is still similar like this. We have static data. There are long times to deliver things, and also the infrastructure investments typically take and to deliver months. And nowadays, like with the challenges of the deliverables, it's quite hard to predict. So this is something that we are facing, and where cloud actually, like in the cloud developments and deployments, should be actually helping to resolve. It's not something that will by default change, but yeah.
Okay, your recent experience being in financial institutions, and what is the value that the cloud is bringing to these kind of companies?
I would cluster it in a kind of direct and indirect benefits and the value that one can gain. The directs would be clearly the, let's say, the flexibility that you might get, because you can get the things very fast, you can decommission them very fast as well. Then, of course, it's a scalability, because you can purchase and also decommission capacities very fast when you need them. And this is then, of course, this model pays you go, because you're just paying what you're consuming at the time when you're consuming. And then you avoid, of course, these long-term deliverables and, again, as mentioned, waiting time for provisioning and investing a lot of money up front with the unclear results, and yeah, ending up typically with the sunk costs.
So that's definitely a lot of motivators why to go to cloud. Yeah. If you had to pick one or some, which ones are right in your mind? Like many times you'll hear stories like we went to the cloud because we wanted to manage our costs. We wanted them to be lower. But what is the right motivation to go to cloud for you?
Well, what I would say is that costs definitely should not be the key driver and the motivation. You know? So cost savings and optimization can come, but should not be. Like, these are typically the pain points that you want to avoid and to overcome. We mentioned some of them as well, but this is also something that you want to bring as the, let's say, something new, something else for the business, you know, like the business enabler, to become the business enabler. And I think this is something that's recognized well also by the business. So, I mean, they live in the same world, so they know what's happening around. So this is something that definitely is probably the most important motivation. Okay. And in our case, if you have the CEO that says, you know, we go into this direction, so there is no left and right, then yeah,
that's a strong
this
one.
is very clear message.
Okay, based on your experiences, what is the thing that I should be doing at the beginning of such a journey to be successful? What is the biggest? What is the factor in being successful at the end?
Well, you know, this journey, if I can call it like this, typically starts with some basic learning where you try like certain things and so on. And of course, then you try to understand how to approach this. You set certain ambitions where you would like to be as a company, because you can either be kind of a fast adopter, you know, you could maybe be on the top of the market, and this is what we've decided in Raiffeisen to be. So we wanted to be the leaders, and we believe that we are in the local market quite well ahead. And then, like based on this, you are structuring your approach. You are trying to upskill employees, because this is very important. Then, of course, you are deciding what kind of vendors you would like to work with. And there are a couple of big market players. I don't want to name them, but I think everybody knows them. And what would be my suggestion is that you typically start with one. You do not try kind of like to go around with everybody, because this is defocusing you. So you really push with one, and then once you get the maturity and experience, then you can gradually extend. And this is also something that's around the contracts that you need to set up, so you need to do it right. This was for us quite a big challenge a couple of years ago. And then, of course, you know, like you need to think about what happens with the as-is world. You know, like how do I manage this as-is world? You know, like how do I try to prepare for migration? You know, like how do I integrate the event, because it's for sure a hybrid world at for a certain period of time, and then you jump into the cold water. Yeah.
Well, that's definitely a lot of topics to think about at the beginning, but if we had to look at it somehow holistically, how does the entire journey look like? How should I proceed? What are the steps to get to the cloud?
So, as mentioned, so at the beginning you start with learning, like, and once you set your ambition, you define the strategy, because I think this is very important, because this gives a guideline what you want to do and by when do you want to do the things, and should be also business driven. You know, like it's not an IT topic, like that we as IT guys, you know, like want to do something nice and interesting. And then afterwards, a part of the upskilling, you learn, you know, like you educate people, and of course then when the time to the migration is coming, you know, like you need to plan it, of course, and this is when you want to understand what do we have in-house. And based on this, you structure the approach for the migration, and then you launch the migration. And based on experience, this is, let's say, 3 to 5 years journey. You know, like until you're able to really structurally approach the migration, to start executing and to really see the substantial improvements and the changes, you know, like in the way how you're doing things.
That's a long program.
It is. It's not a walk on the beach story. Like, of course, you know, like there are a lot of challenges along that you need to think of. You know, like you need to address them. Like, of course, security. Like everything is about data protection, of course. Then we work in a highly regulated environment. So in Europe, financial services are highly regulated. So you need to treat the compliance from the day one. And of course, cost management. You know, like you don't want to end up. And we heard quite a lot about the cases where somebody was forgetting something, and then over the weekend the bill was kind of quadrupled, or in tens of thousands of euros or hundreds of thousands of euros. So this is something that definitely you would avoid. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you also have a lot of war stories and a lot of experiences. If you had to pick one that taught you the most for your future endeavors.
Well, I just mentioned that it's very important. I call it the governance. You need to introduce quite a strong governance. We, as the banking group, have several entities in different countries, and if we would leave everybody doing whatever they want, you know, we would end up in a jungle and uncontrollable environment at the end. So we've decided to set up let's say, the entity that's called Cloud Center of Excellence, which is introducing, let's say, the common baseline of the infrastructure, security controls, cost management, and compliance that were at the end ensuring that everybody goes into the same direction. And this was creating, let's say, the placeholder for the business, for the application owners to execute their part, you know, like without thinking about these kind of things. And it's fully automated. It's secured. So yeah, this would be probably the most important thing.
So interacting with so many daughter companies and probably even within headquarters, what were some of the most over-the-top of objections that you've came across against the cloud? So let's not do cloud because...
Yeah, I've seen already some questions here on the board, which are also related to what you just mentioned. Well, typically the costs are the excuse. And which on one hand side might make sense if you simply do not know what you're doing and you're not taking care of the things, as I said, really to control, to have a controlled environment, not everybody does everything. But what is probably the most bizarre, and it sounds funny, but literally this was the case, the guy was having a server under his desk, and this was something that he was, attached to, was preparing, running, managing for years, and this was about to vanish, so, yeah. And person did not know, where it is, how it is, so it kind of, it's taking a baby away from him, so literally this was this kind of a fear that, people were facing with, yeah.
Well, it's nice to have some heating in the winter.
Yes, legs and everything, so you need to warm the warm shoes, yeah.
We've talked about what I should be doing at the start. We didn't talk about what are the biggest showstoppers, what I should avoid at all costs.
Yeah, that's a good question because showstoppers might be quite along the way, and definitely something that should be avoided is to have an uncontrollable environment. So security must be tackled. Then, of course, for us, compliance, but I think this goes well ahead for everybody because you need to take care of the data, and you also are working with a number of companies with customer data, so this needs to be taken care of from the day one. And yes, of course, you need to manage costs and to ensure that you don't end up with let's say the quite high bill.
20% done, 100% spent.
Yes.
Kind of scenario. Okay, what would you suggest to, for example, us, as we are also a software delivery company, what should we be doing to be cloud ready?
Well, if I would think about the software development companies and the application nowadays, I would start with the architecture basically. So the architecture needs to be, let's call it cloud native. So fully modular, preferably microservices based, to have the integration capacities through the APIs because you're likely connecting with other, let's say, components and systems. Then of course, you need to ensure, which I think is given but still important to be, so the fully automated deployments through the CI/CD pipelines, because this is now the DevOps culture is like this, that you're running this on a daily basis. And speaking about the Cloud Center of Excellence, we had once a very interesting slide where we compared ourselves with the big ones like the Facebook and so on. So we had 3 production deployments per day, which were kind of really for the customers quite transparent. And then comes the security. You need to embed it into the whole process with the SAST, DAST, DAST, so security testing. Yeah, this would be more or less the most important things, yeah.
What are the challenges and countermeasures that can be taken in modernizing applications used in financial institutions?
Yes, the good question is where you start. Typically you need to run the, I would say, full-fledged assessment of what you have in-house. Bottom up, to find the skeletons, that you have in the closet and similar things. And based on this, you structure your migration approach. What we've seen so far is that there are typically 3-speed or 3-way approaches. For the cloud-native, cloud-ready, you lift and shift. It's easily something to be migrated, can be done fast. Then you take the, let's say, the refactoring or modernizing for the applications that can be done. And then the third one is to sunset the legacy stuff, simply forget, and then bring something new, which is cloud native. And for this, I would highly recommend, first of all, to explore the opportunities that the cloud vendors are doing, because they have quite interesting programs to incentivize such activities. But also to use companies like SOFTEC Consulting that have the experience and then can really speed up the things, that can bring the knowledge, additional resources, and then make the things much forward and smoother. Yeah.
And we hope to live to that standard.
Yes, yeah, well, this is your challenge that you need to also follow. Yeah.
Looking forward a little bit into the near future, let's say, what are the trends in cloud computing? What are the advantages of jumping in onto the story right now? Well,
I would say, and this is my personal opinion, that simply cloud is inevitable. So world around us is pushing us, and everybody talks about this. In our private life, we use cloud services without any issue. What I see is that we are moving from the infrastructure as a service type of deployments that were or typical for some years ago, mainly towards the platform and even more towards the software as a service, because this is where you then really bring the value. Because you are not spending efforts and resources and costs on the activities and the parts where they are not your core, let's say, services. Yeah. So.
I'm seeing a lot of questions popping up already, so I will save some time for this discussion. Maybe let's start with some questions, if there might be some in the public on site. If not, then I'll start going through Slido. Can you mention some real example where you decrease delivery time by utilizing cloud?
Well, I will take one risk application that we had back in Raiffeisen in Vienna, where typically it took to renew, so to extend the capacity 6 to 8 months until everything is ready. So, and the guys were quite impatient, because simply the business was expecting something much faster and more flexible. So they said, okay, we want to move to the cloud. Let's try, maybe goes much smoother and faster. So at the end, it turned out that they're able to deliver the new releases literally on the 2-week cycle. So this was a clear, let's say, change and clear benefit for the business, but also IT was benefiting, because they were making things much faster, much easier in a small increments. Yeah.
I would imagine the ability to provision the environment sooner played a big role in that.
Yes.
As you said, the pain point is the motivation to money saving, but from many surveys and analysis, the major motivator or goal for journey to cloud for EU companies is expectation of cost savings, like we mentioned. Who was the enabler or what was the enabler in RPC to go another way?
Okay, so maybe I was not clear when I was saying so. It should not be the main motivation, or should not be the starting point that you say, I want to save 20% costs. It can be achieved. It is a certain maturity that you need to reach, and to explore all the models that are provided by the vendors, how to optimize the cost, how to make things efficient, to change your daily practices, to, for example, switch over the test environments over the weekend because you typically do not need them, and so on. So it is possible to achieve, but this is not the main factor where you should start from. And this is very important. Yeah. And when it comes to the RPC, I mean, we are the part of the big banking group where we have a group strategy, technology strategy, where cloud is on top. So for us, this is a clear direction, of course, and sponsorship comes top down from the CEO, towards the CIO. So very simple.
So having it a strategy and having high-level, C-level management support was...
This was a decisive factor, I would say. Without this, you would not be successful.
Okay. I would like to thank our audience for cooperating, because that question was in Slovak a couple of minutes ago, but somebody fixed it, so thank you. Banks are conservative institutions with huge monolithic systems. Yes. How can we transform them into microservices?
Well, try to explain basically the approach. I mean, it's not from today to tomorrow activity. The thing is that there has to be a certain driver why you want to change. So, and monolithic systems are inflexible. typically the old technologies, it is hard to maintenance, like the costs for the hardware and everything else, or for operating are quite high. So these should be the drivers, and the business is knocking on the door and selling, you listen, I need this, like yesterday. So given this, like this is, I think, a clear direction and a call for the change. And then depending on the system, you might define the approach. You simply sunset and say, listen, we start building something completely new. We will invest because in 3 years' time, we will get the huge benefits out of it. Yeah.
And I believe that the author of the question, what was implicitly in there is that microservices are required to
this is a
reap the benefits of the
exactly,
cloud.
Exactly, future-proofed architecture, absolutely.
What percentage of architecture do you have in cloud already, and what is the target?
So I would say if you think about the overall group, I mean, we are on the different levels and we are accelerating. So in some units, we have already around 50% of the, let's say, application portfolio fully migrated to the cloud. I would be unhonest if I would say that it will be 100%, but as much as possible, and like this is our ambition. Yeah.
Okay, and maybe what's not directly asked, but is somewhere in there in the question is 100% target the wise thing to do, or?
Well, if you think about the compliance or regulatory requirements, you would need, of course, to introduce some kind of, let's say, scenarios or the procedure, like what to do, like if you want to move out from the cloud. I mean, this is a regulatory requirement, and everybody needs to do it. I know for cases where even the companies in the card payments industry are 100% cloud-based. So I don't see the issue, and they're benefiting from all the things that we already mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. I'm really thankful for the discussion we had.
Thank you again for the...
Especially for the end-to-end, all aspects mentioned, kind of.
I hope it was interesting. I know that now it's a break and there are some nice cookies there also and coffee.
So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.